Hello everyone, and good morning or good afternoon depending on where you are joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Annabelle Chaplin from the Business Review and I will be your host. It is our pleasure to have OSTHUS with us today, who will be discussing the role of semantic technologies in a data-driven research and production environment. Today's guest speakers are Heinrich Oberkampf, the Knowledge Engineer at OSTHUS, and Frederic Hübner, the Business Development Manager at OSTHUS. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar platform On24. You'll notice that this webinar is browser-based. So if you disconnect for any reason, please just click on the link that you received via email to rejoin the session. In order to ask questions, you can send them in via the questions widget, which is located at the bottom of the page. Just type the questions into the box at the top left-hand corner of your screen and click Submit. We will allocate around 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the session to address any questions or thoughts that you may have. If you click on the survey widget, there are a few questions in there for you to answer in order to provide feedback. You can do this after the webinar. If you click on the green resource list widget, you will find a PDF file relevant to this webinar. Please use the yellow help widget if you require any assistance. You can move, resize and maximize the windows in front of you to get a better view of the slides. But now, please allow me to welcome Frederic Hübner.
Thank you, Annabelle, for the introduction. So, when working with our customers, we often see that they are struggling with their old systems. Every old system has its inherent data structures, but new applications want to use the same data in a completely different, more innovative way. So you may be tempted to copy and transfer the data into new structures, thereby creating new dependencies. In our webinar, we want to look for another way to deal with this situation. Let's have a look on our today's agenda. For those who don't know us, a few words about OSTHUS. Then we look into why data is increasingly important, where are possible problems. The main part will cover the semantics topic, of course. Then we will have some illustrations that came out of projects to give you more insight of what could be done with the technology. And we end up with the question and answer session. OSTHUS was founded in 1996 with OSTHUS GmbH in Germany. In 2013, we started OSTHUS Incorporated in the US, and in 2015, we opened our new site in China. By now, OSTHUS has more than 70 R&D domain experts. Our implementation teams bring together both science backgrounds in chemistry, biology, physics, cheminformatics, bioinformatics, and of course, general IT background. This combination is definitely one of our strengths. In short terms, we transform the very complex R&D environment into manageable units, systems, and projects to achieve better processes at our customers and help them make better decisions. How do we achieve this? We have three segments in our business. The first is the consultancy, where we are engaged in project scoping, requirement gathering, decision support about possible alternatives. Here we identify the systems building taxonomies or controlled vocabularies, transforming them into ontologies, and define the system scope. In the second segment, the solutions part, this is about building the solutions either from standard industry components and standard applications or create new custom solutions. Here is the place where we build the knowledge-based systems. The third part you see is the managed services. This is where we really support the solutions we built in the production at our customers. So, who we are. For our customers, we work globally from Europe, the US sites, and China. Most of our customers are in the big pharma and biotech. One needs special mentioning, which is the Allotrope Foundation. Allotrope is an industry's consortia driving the standardization of analytical data and integration with the LIMS and ELN vendors. OSTHUS is the allotrope framework architect and the technical leader for the allotrope project. To nearly every project, we add some innovation. We have done framework development, which was new at the time we started, and we are now engaged with allotrope, who are also exploring new space in lab automation by defining and implementing a standard for the chemical analytics. Just recently, we released version 1.0 of the allotrope framework, which is now available to the members and the partners. Another strength of OSTHUS is the partner portfolio focused on R&D. We are working with technology partners like Oracle and Microsoft, and major application partners like IDBS, BioVia, Documentum, Thermo Fisher, Dotmatics, or Generics, but also with a set of smaller companies. We are independent from the vendors in the sense that we are open to integrate any other third-party product when there is a need for. During our projects, we focus on the value that can be derived from the functionality. Not every nice item which may be expensive to build is worthwhile to have, as its value is only marginal. We support our customers in doing these sensible trade-offs. An example would be the value of semantics could be that you don't spend the effort to adapt the data structures each time for a different usage, but use semantics instead as a layer in between the systems and the new applications that will change a lot over time. During our work, we have developed successful concepts and best practices that we redeploy and improve over time. This gives the project a head-on start and is a real benefit to the customers. This is especially true for the field of data sciences. An example would be use of existing reference architectures, reuse of existing ontologies, and build on the experience of successful implementations. Our projects are finished when we got a positive feedback from the end users. This sometimes may need to go an extra mile. Not long ago, in December 2012, IDC, a market research company, and EMC, a leading storage vendor, estimated the size of the digital universe, that is, all the digital data created, replicated, or consumed in that year, to be 2,800 exabytes. And they forecasted this to grow to even 40,000 exabytes by 2020, which means a doubling time of roughly 2 years. If you're not proficient with these type of figures, 1 exabyte equals 1 million terabytes. And so by 2020, according to IDC and EMC, the digital universe will amount to over 5.2 terabytes per person on the planet. The estimates are now that we are 7.2 billion people on Earth in 2020. But by now, even the lab devices continuously generate more data. This sort of data growth clearly requires heroic efforts with the storage to keep it available for as long as it is required, process and reprocess it, and to archive much of it thereafter. The world of science has changed completely in regard to the data situation we had 10 years ago. Data-driven means that people and scientists change their line of action depending on the intermediate data checks, pretty much in the way as your mobile navigation aid may change the way you are driving. Data is used in a control loop where scientific intuition, personal experience, and personal data interpretation is still important. However, the role of data and automatic interpretation in the loop gets increasingly important. I will now turn over to Annabelle for our first poll. Please, Annabelle.
Thank you very much. It's now time for our first poll that will be running in today's session. So please select the answer that is relevant to you and then click Submit. Today's polling question and selection of answers are: how much of your company's data is available in structured and unstructured formats? 20% structured, 80% unstructured, 50% structured, 50% unstructured, and finally 80% structured or 20% structured. Please Choose your answer and press submit. Okay, so we're going to move on to the second polling question now. And the question is, how much of this data is currently not used to their full strength? And your options are 20%, 50%, or 80%. Again, please click submit when you choose your answer. Okay, so if we take a look at the results now to the first question, and there is quite a big percentage there of 66.7% of 20% structured and 80% unstructured. How do you find those results?
Yeah, thank you, Annabelle, for providing the poll questions. My name is Heiner, and I will present the following items of our agenda. And I think the first results show that people are quite aware that most of the data is unstructured. And so commonly one says that 80% is unstructured, and recent IBM research results even reveal that about 85% of the data is unstructured. So the results of our second poll question here is how much of your data is currently not used in their full strength. And I think that the results shown here show that people are aware of the fact that most of the data is not used in their full strength currently. And I think that this is because of two reasons. The first thing is that because most of the data is unstructured, it is more difficult to use, so that has high efforts to create value from the data. And from our experience, the combination of unstructured with structured data is essential to use the data in their full strength. So next, I will explain why data is the driver for R&D. We are in an evolution from a code-centric to a data-centric IT environment. And this trend is in parallel to what Friedrich already mentioned, that we live in an increased data storage capabilities and correspondingly in increased data volumes. So we started in the called code is king era, where code was more important than data. And then with the development of the relational model in 1970, the databases entered the scene, and within that period, a lot of things happened to make storage and the storage of data in databases more professional, and so their code was as important as data. And then with the development of the World Wide Web, with the standards such as HTML, XML, and recently with the development of the linked open data and the Internet of Things, where literally everything gets connected to the Internet, we are moving to a semantic model and open data era. So here data is even more important than code. And let's consider one example of the drug discovery life cycle, and just to mention what kind of different heterogeneous data sources may be involved. So, for example, you start with experiments in a preclinical setting, then substances and organisms, proteins, and so on are of relevance. And then at clinical trials, you may want to compare your results to publicly available resources such as linked clinical trials or publication data. And then in the next phase at production, things like devices, production plants, and so on are relevant, like locations, different organizations. And then finally, when medication is applied, then patient reports or even social media sites like, for example, Patients Like Me are relevant and provide another resource of available data. And what we see at our clients is that there is an increase in the requirement to query that data in an integrated fashion. And the problem, however, is that much of this data remains still in different silos and it is not sufficiently linked. So to give you an outlook, we have here the linked open data cloud that currently consists of about 570 data sets that are publicly available. And this data represents data from different sectors. So, for example, the one here in pink are data repositories on life science data, but you have other sectors such as government, publications, and so on. And just to give you an outlook, under the Horizon 2020 program, open access to publications and data is now mandatory. So this linked data cloud will even grow. And I want to emphasize that here the discussion is not on whether data is open or closed. It is simply for you an opportunity to enrich your internal data without the need to expose your own data. So, and semantic technologies provide the basic technical framework for this linked data environment. So it provides an opportunity for you to link your internal data to other resources. But obviously, there are several challenges along the road that need to be addressed. So big data was originally defined by these three V's. Friedrich was talking already about the volume. One commonly says also that 90% of all data ever created was created within the last 2 years. So additionally to volume, we have velocity, which you could call also data in motion. So here we talk about stream data and real-time requirements. And thirdly, we have variety, that is data in many different forms. And these forms may be different contents, like structured data to unstructured data, different domains such as research, production, chemistry, biology, and so on, different ownerships. You might have internal data from different departments, or you might have external data from collaborators or publicly available data. And obviously you have data in many different formats. And semantic technologies are well suited to tackle exactly the variety problem of big data. And these were the initial 3 V's, but new market analysis or research also revealed more V's, such as veracity, which is the uncertainty of data, or the value that you can create out of big data. But these were the initial ones, and that's why, and variety is the one that is close related to semantic technologies. So if you want to combine data from different heterogeneous sources, then there are common issues, like, for example, that it's difficult to mine the data because context is stored somewhere else. It is also difficult to integrate data if you get data in different file formats. And sometimes it might be even hard to find the right data because data is not sufficiently interlinked. Yeah? And another aspect is that you cannot correctly interpret your data if context information is incomplete or inconsistent. So in order to combine data successfully, that is from different resources, you need 2 things. You need a shared vocabulary, and you need shared data structures. And in order to create value out of your data, you need a good understanding of its content. And that is exactly what smart data is about. It is about explicit semantics of content and context connected with domain knowledge. So to give you an example, if you have an analysis of blood, you might have absolute values for certain type of chemicals in that blood, but without having a normal range that might be patient-specific, you cannot interpret the values regarding whether the value is high, low, or within normal range. So that brings us to the role of semantic technologies for tackling the challenges of variety. And just to give you an example, consider the term Washington. Humans have quite a good understanding that there are different Washingtons. There's the President of the United States, George Washington. There's the capital, Washington, D.C., the state in the U.S., there's the bridge in New York, and so on. And for humans, it's quite simple to distinguish the different meanings of the term Washington by context information. For machines, however, who is just reading the term as a string, it is really difficult. So semantic technologies are good to make these semantics explicit for machines. And just to give you a more life science example, the data model behind semantic technologies is quite simple. So we have subject, predicate, object, which is also called a triple, and information is represented in this form. So, for example, a hepatomegaly is a clinical finding. Integrelin is a medication that has a side effect, weight loss, or creatinine has the role of being a human metabolite. So the subject, predicate, object is quite easy also for humans to understand because it's like a natural language. And to give you a more real world example, consider the ontology for chemical entities of biological interest. This is a freely available dictionary of molecular entities. And so, for example, here you have, on this slide, I have two entities, creatinine and lactam. And creatinine is a specific type of lactam. And an important thing in semantic web is that you distinguish identifiers, which are represented through URIs. So the pureobollibrary.org, etc., represents the identification for creatinine, while the lexical information or the label that is for humans is separated from that. And you can attach, or Cabby attaches additional information to that entity. So, for example, the German label creatinine, or a chemical notation, a formula, or a textual definition. And additionally, these entities can be linked. So you end up with a graph structure that represents different types of information. And even though these graphs and triples are good to understand for machines, for humans, it's often more easy to see document-like structures. So while in the classical web we had links between different web pages and documents, where the link had no precise semantics, in semantic web we have individual data items linked, and the Resource Description Framework, or short RDF, is a standard for encoding this type of knowledge, and this is standardized by the World Wide Web Consortium. And in comparison to linking between documents, we are have far more detailed representations of the data. But as I said, for humans, it is easier to read web pages. So, for example, a lookup of the URL for creatinine can give you additional information about that. So, for example, here you see what initially was presented in form of triples. Here you see it as a web page that you have the creatinine, the name, an image for the chemical structure, the formula, or other notations. And there are different knowledge organization systems with different levels of semantic expressivity that you can employ to encode this kind of knowledge. So on the very low end, we have controlled vocabularies. That is just a controlled list of terms that you define to be used to describe certain type of entities. So you can think of that as pick lists. And then you have synonyms where you denote which terms denote the same thing. Then you have coding systems, and those of you who are working in the clinical domain probably know the International Classification of Diseases. So there you have codes for diagnosis information. And so that a clinician in Germany or a clinician in Spain or the US use the same codes to encode the same kind of diseases, so that it doesn't matter whether I call it melanoma or skin cancer or in German Hautkrebs, everybody is referring to the same code. And then you have more expressive knowledge organization systems, so taxonomies with hierarchies, thesauri. You have conceptual models where you distinguish between instances and classes, and then on the very high end you have ontologies with logical definitions. So while the first systems are used to provide a shared vocabulary, the systems on the right upper corner are used to represent a shared domain knowledge. And just to give you an example, you might have a taxonomy on plants and a taxonomy on insects or on organisms, and there are many of these taxonomies freely available, and the opportunity here is to reuse the existing taxonomies and knowledge models and augment them with your internal knowledge. So, for example, if you have an experiment that a certain plant has passed a certain type of leaf miner, you can include that knowledge and augment these kind of systems in your internal environment. And so essential here is that it is possible to reuse it, but adapt it to your specific business and application needs. And we can help you achieve these goals. And what we commonly see at our clients is that they already have their internal coding system. And in order to bridge the gap to external systems, you can define, or you will have to define, mappings that align your terminology or your internal thing to the external world. And the simple knowledge organization system, short SCORS, provides a vocabulary exactly for defining these kind of alignments and mappings. And just briefly, a comparison to the traditional databases. As with databases, you have a storage system. Here it's called a triple store because information is represented not in form of tables, but in form of triples. And the query language is called Sparkle, where you describe a graph pattern, and the results are either lists or, again, graphs. And so that is very similar to relational databases. And now I would like to hand over to Annabelle for our next poll questions.
Thank you very much. So same again, audience members. This is the second lot of poll questions which will be running in today's session. So after I've read the question out, please click an answer to the most one appropriate to yourself. And the question is, do you already use freely available data, such as taxonomies or other linked data, for annotation of your data? And your options are yes, no, planning it, implementing it, or don't know. Please press submit when you choose your answer. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next polling question now. And your question is, if you're planning to go for semantic technologies, what is the timescale? Immediately, the next 6 months, next year, beyond next year, and finally, no plans for semantic technologies. Again, please click submit when you choose your answer. Okay, so we will have a look at the results now. And we have 50% of the audience members choosing yes. How do you find those results?
Yeah, I think that shows that people are aware of the fact that they can make use of existing taxonomies for describing their data and to make it interoperable with other data. And on the other hand, I think the poll shows that many people are at least planning it. So an interesting thing here is that 1 year ago we have done the same poll questions, and we had a lot more people at the don't know or at the no answers. And for those people who are still on the no, I think maybe the use cases I will present at the end of this webinar might be inspiring and to see where possible applications might be for their cases. So for those who are planning, I think this shows that many people are already doing it in a near future, and we are at OSTHUS already implementing them. And I would like to go to the next agenda item, that is the use cases that show how we at OSTHUS are applying semantic technologies in various client projects. So I have 3 use cases, and the first use case is on development of a standard for data around the laboratory analytical processes. And this work is done by OSTHUS for Allotrope Foundation, which is a large consortium of major pharmaceutical companies. And simplified, an analytical process takes a sample as the input and outputs some data. The problem here, however, is that on the one hand, we have many different analytical techniques. So, for example, a pH measurement, thermogravimetry, weighing processes, chromatography, mass spectroscopy, or also hyphenated methods like the HPLC and subsequent mass spectroscopy. And we also have more biology-related techniques such as cell counting. And these different data sets show the variety problem of big data. And additionally to the variety that comes from the different analytical techniques, another issue is that this data is generated by machines that are from different vendors. So every vendor outputs the data in different formats, and so for pharmaceutical companies, it is often a huge challenge or even impossible to analyze data produced by different machines or that was created by different laboratories. And so the solution of this problem was first the creation of that consortium of the Allotrope Foundation, so to create a common standard for the pharmaceutical industry. And technically, this meant that firstly, it was on creating a shared vocabulary, and we are doing that by defining 4 different domain taxonomies on equipment, material, processes, and results. And this is the first step to establish unique identifiers to name things such as experimental methods, chromatography, and so on. And a second thing is to define a shared data structure for n-dimensional result data. So here on this slide you see a mass spectrum where you have the intensity and the mass on the axis, and here we have that the axes are identified through allotrope identifiers, so that it doesn't make a difference whether it is called intensity or ion count or with an abbreviation like IC. All these data get comparable. So by using the allotrope data standard, our member companies get the possibility to query result data in an integrated fashion. And so if you are interested in this kind of data and this data standard, then you can either contact us or you can also visit the Allotrope website, which you can find at allotrope.org. Our second use case is on reference data management. So here we have a company that has many different departments and many different applications that currently do not speak the same language. So in order to provide a shared reference vocabulary for these applications, we created a reference data service where the different taxonomies are stored and made accessible. Here we have the different lexical names like creatinine I've shown before. So we have the synonym information, the different abbreviations used by different departments, and so on. And also mappings between different coding systems that might have overlapping domains are accessible there. So, for example, when you acquire another company, often this brings in another coding system, and in order to integrate these different data sources, you need to define these kind of mappings. And by providing this reference data service, applications from different departments such as research or development now speak the same languages. They use the same reference vocabularies, and then they can interact. And here, so if you are struggling with many different coding systems, be it internal, legacy, or those of your own department, then we can help you build up this kind of reference data service to make your applications speak the same language. And the third and final use case is on information retrieval from unstructured data. So consider the case when you have many documents such as patient reports, and a clinician is interested to state a certain diagnosis. Then one way to make the unstructured data better accessible is to provide semantic annotations of that text, and the items that you are using to annotate the unstructured data are coming from your reference vocabulary or from your knowledge graph in the background. So by using this kind of knowledge graph in the back, you understand that the term liver that appeared in a certain sentence in a patient report actually is a lobular organ, which is an anatomical entity. And on the other hand, weight loss is a clinical finding. So when a clinician wants to confirm, for example, whether the patient suffers from lymphoma, then both sentences, the one on liver or the one on weight loss, might be relevant. And even though the sentence might describe a normal liver, this is relevant for lymphoma as well, because a normal liver might allow a clinician to exclude a certain diagnosis. On the other hand, if you know that the patient takes integralin, then weight loss might be not a symptom, but just a side effect of that medication. So here you see that knowledge-based access to unstructured data is important to create different and new access paths and to use their unstructured data in different processes. And so if you have many documents, large document repositories, and you want to use that in many different contexts, then a knowledge-based access is probably a good way to deal with that, and we can help you with these kind of problems. So we've discussed several things. We have discussed why data is becoming the driver, also the common challenges in big data, and the semantic solutions that are possible. So in summary, I would say that while initially data was created for a certain purpose, today data is constantly generated and may be used in different contexts that might not be foreseen when the data was actually created. So semantic technologies can help you to overcome the common challenges in interoperability, or to allow a contextualized search and browsing. There's plenty of knowledge that you can reuse, and also semantic technologies can be used for automatic reasoning or validation of your data. And that's because semantic technologies provide a good framework either for standardized but also for extendable data descriptions that you need in order to create value from data. Or maybe more focused, it helps you to break barriers between different data silos and to unlock the potential of your data. And now I would like to hand over to Friedrich, who will give you some more details on how OSTHUS can help you with semantic technologies.
So, thank you, Heiner, for giving us this overview on the semantic technologies. I would like now take a look into the way how you can possibly deploy semantics. So we have seen that semantic stores meaning with the data in itself. Overall, the interpretation of the data in the application gets less important. Semantics can reduce the effort for maintaining the data silos and the management of the data copies. Let us share one insight here that we have gathered by working with our customers. Some customers tried to introduce a vendor product for semantics rather quickly without much thought about change management. They found out that this was not very successful and blamed the vendor product for it. We at OSTHUS are there to do proper planning and designing for the things, and will help you with the implementation and also support you in the necessary changes that are needed to make a project successful, both in the administrative and the organizational areas. For doing that, we may help you with a design of semantic concepts, develop taxonomies and ontologies, go through the available ones, select the ones that are most relevant to your problem, and do the requirement and engineering for the knowledge-based systems. This is done in our consultancy segment of the company. And if it comes to the implementation, we may help you with the reference data management, help you by the linkages between your legacy data systems together with a common reference layer, and provide advanced analytics for the knowledge discovery. If you're not familiar with the semantic technologies, or you're at the very starting of the topic, we may be there to help you with training and give you more insight and select the proper technologies that could be deployed. So I'm at the end, and we are now handing over to Annabelle. And Annabelle will go through possible questions that have come in during the webinar.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We are now going into our Q&A session. So audience members, please, if you do have any questions or thoughts, do send them in via the questions widget, and hopefully we'll have time to answer that before the end of today's webinar. So I'm going to go into the first question now, and the question is, we're planning to go into semantics. How should we tackle such a project?
So, okay. So I think that is a good question, because this is probably from those of you who are planning, but on the other hand, maybe don't know how to do that. And I think the first thing is to look at what kind of application or business scenarios do you want to solve with. And we can help you, for example, to look at your data and figure out what kind of data structures or semantic structure would help you to solve your problems. And normally we do that in kind of a workshop thing, for example, to show you or to explain you and your team the different possibilities you can go. So I think then we could help you to get into that.
Okay, thank you very much. We're now going into our next question now, and it is, do you have experience with CDISC, SDTM, ADAM, or send data, or HL7 data?
Yeah. So that's also a good question. Yeah, I'm quite familiar with the CDISC, and this is similar to what we are doing at Allotrope. At Allotrope, we are doing a semantic standard for laboratory analytical data, and CDISC, on the other hand, is doing a similar thing for clinical studies. So that kind of can be compared to what we're doing at Allotrope. It's just another domain. And on the other hand, the HR7 is a standard for the clinical domain, and this is also an interesting case, because there you see that they started initially with a clinical document standard, so the very basic things of sections of clinical documents, and now they are also going more detailed on standardizing the clinical, the different, let's say the different clinical findings, for example, or clinical procedures and so on. So that is also similar to what we are doing with the result data in the analytical domain. And I think this shows just that semantic technologies are used in many different domains, and that it is going from high-level metadata descriptions to more detailed descriptions of single data items.
Okay.
Do you have another question?
Yes, we have another one. The next question is, can you compare triple stores to relational databases regarding security, scalability, performance? Will triple stores replace relational databases?
Okay. So I think that relational databases have, on the one hand, they have a longer history, and correspondingly, they are more mature regarding security, scalability, and also performance. Triple stores still need to catch up regarding this. But on the other hand, we see that in the past, let's say 2 years, new vendors appeared on the market that exactly address these kind of issues regarding scalability, performance, and also security. And another aspect is that we often see at clients is that it is not relational database or triple store. It is more like how could you combine the two things in your environment. So, for example, you might have a large amount of experiment data that you want to keep in your relational database. However, in order to combine that, you want to create a semantic layer on top of it so that you can pose semantic queries on your relational data. And the advantage of triple stores, on the other hand, is that you have a very flexible schema and that semantic technologies provide a standard for describing data. So I think a good combination of both is the answer, and it's not the one or the other.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is, I have the experience that existing taxonomies or ontologies are sometimes very large, which applications are slow. What can we do about that?
Okay, so we had a slide on the plant taxonomy and the insects, and in fact it is quite often the case that these ontologies or taxonomies are really large. So, for example, the NCBI taxonomy on organisms contains more than 60,000 entities. Or, on the other hand, you have in the clinical domain SNOMED CT that contains more than 300,000 entities. And it is in fact the case that if you use these reference knowledge systems as such, then it may slow down your application. So the key is to select modules or to customize these systems for your application and business cases. So, for example, you could also index certain type of information that is relevant for search and retrieval of information. And on the other hand, you could materialize implicit knowledge in order to avoid ad hoc reasoning that slows down your application, so that you have the inferred triples already available in memory.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is, we have our own internal coding system. Why should I change this?
Okay. I think you don't have to change your coding system. I think it's good if you have already your coding system, because it shows that you're on the right path. The only thing I think that you could enhance is that in order to connect your data or augment your data, enrich your data with open data, you probably need mappings to a external coding system. And further, I think if you transform your coding system to standardized semantic web technologies for describing these codes and labels and so on, then it will be easier to combine it with other systems. So it makes you easier to pose the same queries to different coding systems. So I think it is not on whether you should change it completely. It's more a alignment issue you have to do there.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is, often there are many different ontologies that I could use. How could I select the right one?
Yeah, that is a common issue. So, for example, in the biomedical domain, maybe you know the bioportal, that is an ontology repository containing more than 400 different ontologies. And just for example, if you want to select a ontology or a taxonomy for disease information, you could choose at least between 4 or 5 different ontologies. And so I think choosing the right one depends on the one hand, depends on your data and applications scenarios. So what do you want to do with that coding system? Which data needs to be covered? So, for example, if you want to annotate unstructured text, then you could try to measure the coverage and then select it. On the other hand, in some cases, there might be also regulatory issues that for communication with authorities, you have to codify your data using certain codes. So, for example, the International Classification of Diseases for diagnosis information. And so there you do not have so much freedom. But in general, it really depends. And we at OSTHUS, we can help you select the right ones and also customize them for your purpose. And so, for example, in our show, we did exactly that we used existing ones. We used the chemical methods ontology, augmented it, adapted it, and so on to create a good, mature standard for laboratory analytical processes.
Okay, thank you very much, audience members, for your questions today. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. But if there are any questions that you sent in and they've not been addressed, hopefully the presenters will get back to you and give you a little bit of feedback. So that just leaves me. Heine, Frederic, do you have any final comments that you'd like to leave for today's webinar?
Yes, I would like to thank all the participants for attending. And if there are any questions, please feel free to send us and drop us a mail. We will make sure that we will get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, that just leaves me to thank Heine Oberkampf and Frederic Hübner for what was a great presentation, and to also thank OSTHUS. To the attendees, you'll receive an email shortly telling you how you can access the on-demand version of this webinar, or you can access this through our website, which is www.business-review-webinars.com. Once this webinar ends, today's survey will appear in its place, and we would appreciate it if you answer the questions in there. We look forward to sharing further webinars with you, so please do keep an eye out on the website just mentioned and follow us on Twitter at BR Webinars for daily updates, and join our LinkedIn group, Business Review Webinars. Thank you once again, and I hope you all have a lovely day.